Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale, and with me today is Mr. PS Raghavan, a former diplomat and now chairman of the National Security Advisory Board, who works closely with the government and, of course, the NSCS, the National Security Council Secretariat, which advises the government on various national security issues, both traditional and non-traditional. Welcome to this program, Mr. Raghavan.
Very nice to be with you today.
Thank you. I want to start with a slew of announcements that the government, through the finance minister, made on Saturday, where several policy reforms have been declared now, which seem very far-reaching and path-breaking, really. So, let me begin with the first of that policy reforms, which speaks about increasing the FDI in defense to 74% from 49%, which via the automatic route. Can you tell us what effect will it have and how the government expects this to work?
I really do believe that the entire range of announcements that the finance minister made on self-reliance in the defense industry is a far-reaching measure. In fact, it is probably one of the most significant initiatives taken in the recent past from a national security and strategic perspective. And really, if you permit me, before we get to the 74% FDI limit,
Right.
I want to talk in general about the framework in which this whole decision was taken, and to take it forward in a logical manner. If you need to go
Please
back.
go ahead, sir. Please
Sorry,
go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. I said, please.
No, what I'd like to do is I'd like to set the stage by sort of listing out what this government has been doing since 2014 in order to strengthen our defense preparedness, in order to make sure that we move forward in a manner in which our defense preparedness matches our global power ambitions and our national security and strategic requirements.
Please suit yourself, sir. Please suit yourself.
Yeah,
go ahead.
From the time this government took over in 2014, the accent has been, and you've written a lot on this subject, the accent has been on strengthening our defense preparedness, on making sure that we not only defend our borders, but we also defend our interests along the coastline, in the Indian Ocean, and in the Indo-Pacific. And starting from that premise are the strengthening of our weapons systems, of trying to make sure of trying to make sure that we acquire weaponry not only from one source, diversification of military acquisitions, the improvement of the technologies that we're getting. This has been a constant process since then. Along with that, you can say, is also the effort to rationalize the actions within our armed forces,
Right.
to try to see that inter-service and intra-service resource allocations are made more rational. And in this, of course, comes the creation of the Department of Military Affairs, the appointment of the Chief of Defense Staff, who also incidentally has a specific target to promote indigenization within the armed forces.
True.
Then we recognize, the government recognized the role of technology in defense. The fact that today's wars are not fought only on land, sea, and air, but also on the space domain, cyber domain, electronics, information technology, and therefore you have the cyberspace agency, the cyber agency, the space agency, and others. So and at the same time, the Prime Minister has been talking about Make in India in defense right from 2014 onwards.
Exactly.
And the first project, in fact, which was announced was the project with Russia, the Ka-226 helicopters, which was announced as the first Make in India project in defense. Now, what I think the present announcement of the Finance Minister draws upon our experiences in Make in India in defense, The problems also that we have had because of the defense procurement procedures, which may not have been quite, procurement is not investment. And actually to frame an investment policy within a defense procurement procedures, there is a problem there. There is a conceptual problem there.
Exactly.
So it is a recognition of all that has led to this package of reforms which has come there. And I know even before I talk about the 74% raise in the FDI limit, we need to talk about the recognition which is inherent in the finance minister's statement that Indian industry is capable of designing and manufacturing to quality standards weapon systems, subsystems, and spares, uh, which our armed forces can take. And that is why, even more important than the 74% is the announcement of a list of items which shall not be imported. And this actually recognizes, you have a whole range of items which have been designed, which have been manufactured, which have gone through qualification trials, and yet today they face competition from foreign bidders.
Vendors.
You're talking about missile systems like Akash and Nag. You're talking about light combat aircraft, light combat helicopters. You're talking about artillery guns, radar, electronic warfare, armored vehicles. That list can go on.
Yes.
So today, your Indian industry, which has got used to a situation where our own country does not believe in their capabilities, but they are doing strong business, very lucrative business with foreign clients.
Right.
They're subcontracting for foreign clients. So
Correct.
today, they can contribute directly into the defense industry of this country. I think this is a major blow for indigenization. It's a major show of support for our industry, which has reached that level. Now, if you talk about FDI, we already have joint ventures with our strong Indian companies have with other companies, which are manufacturing for our defense industry.
Yes,
so
of course.
What will happen, I think, with the 74% is that you have broadened the field. You will probably attract more foreign companies. You will probably attract them to manufacture a better, let's say, the next level of defense equipment in India. And will probably, you see, of course, there is a catch here. If you have to make defense manufacturing viable, particularly for a foreign country in India, you have to have a defense export policy which is coherent and transparent. Again, about this, you know this. So you have set the stage, this 74%, you've set the stage for companies coming in. Of course, people talk about companies moving in from China when they're vacating China. We don't need to look at it that way. I think we have a market of our own. We have a framework of our own. And I think we have capacity to attract investment, provided we set the right conditions for it. And setting the right conditions, of course, means also creating a level playing field in a number of ways. There are other general investment regime has to also match the liberalization which we have now got, which the Prime Minister's speech, if you recall, talks about this. And we do expect that a liberalization of the broader investment regime will create the conditions for this 74% to take effect more effectively.
I agree with you, and I'm so glad, Mr. Raghavan, that you spoke about the IDDM because in 2016, and I want to confess this here, that I was one of the strongest votaries of IDDM, the indigenously designed, developed, manufactured clause that is there in the DPP 2016. I fought really hard for that with a couple of friends, and I'm glad that you are supporting that because that's the way to go, because the IP remains with Indian companies when you do design and development. And I think what you just said about the FDI limit being raised is actually facilitating joint ventures maybe in India for exports, because Indian armed forces will have limited buying capacity or will buy only a limited number, what they require. So moving forward, there is also this negative list that you spoke about, which I think will encourage, and I've spoken to a couple of major Indian defense industry leaders, and they're really thrilled about it, excited about it to contribute. And I think maybe we are at a stage where the US was in 1941, just before they joined or just after they joined the Second World War, where the industrial military capability really increased. I don't know whether it's a hyperbole, but that's the expectation. So moving on, you're talking also about having a separate budget for indigenously manufactured defense platforms. How will that work, sir?
See, that is actually a confidence building measure, if you like to call it that, because it is to sort of give an assurance to our industry that there is a part of the cake that is reserved for you. But let's look at it this way. I don't think that has to be a limiting factor. If you have an overall defense acquisitions budget and the budget for domestic acquisition is filled up, you can, after all, take from the other budget and put it into this. This is just a sort of confidence building measure to industry that, look, we've got you in mind, and we can this much at least you can be sure about. But I think we
Okay.
should be, I mean, we should be looking to expand that proportion of that budget to fill the entire budget at some point of time. I mean, that's in the future. But I think it is a confidence building measure. It's also a
Right.
confidence building measure in what the finance minister said, that there will now be a time bound defense procurement process, which is very important. That also, it was just a throwaway line, but it is of great significance. And she said that trial and testing procedures will be overhauled.
Right.
It's a very
Right.
important reform.
It is. It
And,
is.
and, and all those who know this process understand how significant this is. Also, a professional project management unit to contract management. Now, how significant is all this? Now, if you look at it, you look at the period from 2015 to 19, the Defense Acquisition Council, which is the apex body determining the what they call the acceptance of necessity for
Right.
various, you know, they have approved over 200 defense proposals, acquisition proposals, for a total value of 4 lakh crores.
Correct.
Almost all of them are in the initial stages of processing, which
Right.
which underlines the need for what the finance minister said, a time-bound defense procurement process. Uh, on the flip side, it also gives us an opportunity today. Since
Right.
they're all in the initial stages, we can now go through them and see and prioritize them on the basis of those which high indigenous content, and
Correct.
see whether we can move them up the ladder. So,
Right.
it actually gives an opportunity, while proving the necessity for what the finance minister said. It gives us an opportunity as well.
It does. In fact, one of the things that the MOD must do is to make sure that the indigenous content is genuine when they talk about the IDDM category of procurement, and then people don't fudge it. But let me move on to the corporatization proposal for the Ordnance Factory Board factories, because that's a very significant and very difficult decision to take, I think. And I think you can elaborate a little bit on that, because you've in the NSAB worked with NSCS, I'm told, very extensively on the entire proposal. If you can shed some light on that, sir.
See, the Ordnance Factory Board and our ordnance factories, as you know, have a long and illustrious history. They they were the flag bearers of indigenization in our country.
Yep, of course.
and 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 over a period of time, they actually manufacture an entire range of products, from weapon systems to subsystems to spares and ammunitions to even auxiliaries like uniform and boots. But so today, what we require, given the requirements of a modern armed forces, particularly the technology requirements, you do, and this has been accepted for a long period of time, that you do need a rationalization of their operation in order
Right.
to make them more relevant to today's needs.
Right.
And I think this process again, I see that you wrote about this in 2019, about the need for corporatization of the ordnance factory. That's in fact about the time when the NSAB started working with the NSCS to see whether we could engineer a debate, a focused debate, with the participation of the OFB, not from outside,
Right.
and going through, and our General Subrata Saha, in fact, who was a member of the NSAB, he worked closely with the NSCS on this subject to evolve a framework that would not be destructive, but at the same time constructively utilize the plus points of the ordnance factories and position them in areas where they can genuinely add value to our
Right.
indigenization program. So, the non-core, what you might call the non-core activities of the OFB, if you want to separate from the core activities, strengthen the core activities, and that's what the finance minister talked about: corporatization of factories, listing them even, which makes them more competitive and which makes them more focused in delivery. It basically positions them in such a way that they effectively bridge the gap between the designer and the user.
Which
To
is
place them
important.
between the designer and the user with contact
Which
with
is
both.
important.
I
Yes.
think this is again a very far-reaching reform.
Right.
Of course, there is a lot of action that needs to be done. There's a lot of bridges that have to be crossed. But I
Correct.
think this is a step in the right direction.
No, no, I agree. And so, defense actually is very excited from whatever preliminary reactions that I have got from different stakeholders. But I think one of the more significant reforms declaration or decision that was declared the other day has been underplayed in the media and otherwise is the commercial opportunities for private players in space. You worked in space for a long
Excuse
time,
me,
both in the
Nitin,
PMO.
can I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, please.
I would like to talk to you about one more aspect which we need to focus on in order to give effect to these reforms,
Okay, sir.
which is the DPP 2020, which is under discussion now. The DPP was, of course, the draft which is under circulation was before these announcements came in.
Right.
I think the discussion should now take into account the measures which have been announced,
Mm-hmm.
and suitable changes will need to be made. The concept of strategic partnership, which has created a lot of problems. I mean, it has been through many iterations in the past, and
Exactly.
frankly, it hasn't worked.
Right.
And I think we need to now put it in the framework of these reforms and see how we can develop frameworks for strategic partnerships which can be effective. The
Correct.
other aspect, when you look at procurement, and now if you're looking at indigenization, you cannot look at a mechanical L1 formula for selection of equipment. You have to build into it an indigenization content. The
Mm-hmm.
evaluation process should build an indigenization content into it and give a weightage for that. Secondly, I think indigenization, a lot of people don't understand what indigenization actually means.
Right.
Need to prioritize technology over volume or value.
Yes.
So
Of
if
course.
I make all the chassis for equipment that is being made, yes, it will be great in volume, maybe even great in value,
Yeah.
but not in value to our country in technology terms. So I think we need to be able to define indigenization with prioritizing technology over value or volume. So I think this process of the DPP 2020 is very important, and it comes at a very right time when it is still in a draft stage and they're
Right.
capable of being amended in order to keep the current course of indigenization defined by the finance minister in mind.
Keeping in step with that, I think that L1 T1 concept is something that we must look at very closely, where you have the L1 in commercial terms and technology also built into it, or the indigenization content. I think, therefore, Indian companies, of course, will have to step up to the plate. I mean, they can't be just saying that we are Indian, therefore you must give us the contract. I mean, they have to prove the quality. I'm sure you agree to that. But can we move on to space? Because space is something also is very exciting, but hasn't been given that kind of attention. And you've worked in space, both in the PMO and I think currently also you're working with some players in space. Can you tell us the privatization or say commercial opportunities for private players in space?
Actually, space is what you might call the unsung achievement of Indian industry in many ways.
It is.
We have achieved so much in space over
Right.
the last few decades in the face of extraordinary sanctions.
Correct.
And today, if you look at what ISRO has achieved, end to end technologies from launching to building of satellites to the payloads, every aspect of it. We have, in fact, in many ways, you can say that our achievements in space exceed that of some of the other major spacefaring nations because of the applications to which we have put space to,
Right.
particularly developmental applications.
Yes. Yes.
Now, you have reached a stage where also, because of miniaturization, because of the advances made in areas like Earth observation and so on, the commercial opportunities in space have expanded greatly. Now,
They have.
India, having achieved so much in technology, should position itself to benefit from the commercial space industry that exists. Today, according to estimates, the revenues generated by the global space industry is something like $360 billion.
Correct.
India's share in that is what? It's about $7 billion.
That's all.
It's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, according to a variety of consultants, the global space industry is expected to grow to something like $2 to $3 trillion over the next 10 years or so. There is no reason why India should not get a major percentage of this global market. But what do we need to do? And that is what, if you look at what the finance minister announced,
Right.
that the Indian private sector, she says, will be a co-traveler in India's space sector journey. And this is very, very important.
Exactly.
For all that ISRO has achieved, ISRO now has to, shall we say, father the creation of industry in India under its fold. It needs to be able to transfer technologies that it has developed to private players so that they can take advantage of that. And if you and for that, of course, you have a situation today where the regulator and the operator are the same. ISRO is the regulator, ISRO is the operator.
Operator, yeah.
So, first and foremost, what do you need? You need a regulatory framework. It should be a light touch regulatory framework. It should not, again, be
Cumbersome.
cumbersome. But
Yeah.
it needs to be a regulatory framework in which private sector can operate on an equal footing with ISRO, at least as far as the operation of non-strategic sectors of space is concerned.
Right.
Also, given the way in which the strategic applications of space have expanded, ISRO is going to be increasingly occupied with the strategic applications of space.
I can see that.
So,
yeah.
And therefore, I think ISRO should open up to private players, and there are a number of startups coming up. There are a number of startups which have a wide range of products to offer. But what do you require today? You require, as I said, a regulatory framework. You require, once a regulatory framework is there and once a number of players come into the field, you require, something like TDSAT, a dispute settlement mechanism.
Yes.
You require also, I think, an industry association, because we will be feeling our way into opening up space.
Correct.
So you need an industry association which can share with government the needs of the industry and how it can be taken forward. And of course, a liberal geospatial data policy, which she's talked about, which the ministers talked about. So If we do all of this, I think there is no reason if by 2024 we are looking at a $5 trillion Indian economy, why space should not generate revenues of about 1% of that 5 trillion.
Which is a very good way to look at it, because like you said, ISRO has been a front runner, or has been a a pioneer in this, but they have to now give this benefit to others and private players, and I think that's the aim of this entire slew of defense reforms that have been announced. But I think the contribution here of thinkers who have gathered under the NSAB umbrella, and the whole of government approach is very clear, that government is very well aware that unless reforms come in all sectors, and even in strategic sectors, I think the economy may not really get that kind of a boost. But what are your final question to you? What are your thoughts on the implementation? Because many people who I have spoken to have been a little cynical about this, but I want you to tell me if implementation will be taken care of, and I'm sure you've spoken about this within the government also. Can we have a speedy implementation of all these proposals?
Cynicism is understandable. After all, we cannot forget our past. We have been through many periods in our history where hope has led to frustration.
Right.
And we must recognize, you see, whether you're talking about defense,
Yes.
particularly in defense with the whole lot of domestic and external players, very entrenched practices, very strong vested interests, uh, it's going to be very, very difficult to overcome. Uh, the point only is that we are in a crisis.
Right.
Normally, crises are the best situation to overcome major challenges. Actually, if you look at it, all major reforms need at least three M's: the
Right.
method, the money, and the mindset. Of course, you also
Well
need
put.
manpower, but we have a lot of manpower.
Yes.
Now, method and money are not as big a problem as the mindset.
Absolutely. I agree. I
And
agree.
that is where, if you have a crisis, maybe that is the
The
catalyst
catalyst. Yeah,
that can
exactly.
change the mindset. We have to hope for that. I know that the government is very determined, but this requires not only the government, this requires participation of a very wide range of players in the government,
Right.
in the public sector, in the private sector, in the user community.
Sure.
So
Sure.
you require a very broad range of cooperation to make this happen. But I think everyone should try to do their best to make it happen.
I'm very optimistic about it. In fact, I just said that we are in the back to the wall situation as far as defense is concerned, because the budget is limited and the requirements are growing every day. So this is something, that opportunity that we all must grab, and we all must contribute to. But Mr. Raghavan, thank you very much for those insights, because that gives us not just hope, but also the confidence that such a crisis has brought us an opportunity, which is, I think, perhaps once in 30 years it comes along, and we all must grab this. But thank you very much for speaking about all those defense reforms. I think our viewers and readers will benefit immensely from your insights and your knowledge that you have shared with us.
Thank you very much.